So, what if the race to build artificial general intelligence is already over? And we just didn't get the memo? That's a huge claim at the center of an article we're breaking down today, which says, hey, we are already living in the age of AGI.
The author kicks things off with this bombshell of a statement. They're basically saying that ever since tools like ChatGPT went public back in November 2022, we've had systems that can reason, create, and solve problems across just about any domain you can think of. The whole argument is, if we judge AGI by what it can do, not by some unprovable inner feeling, then the game's already changed. It's here.
According to the author, this entire debate really boils down to a clash between two totally different ways of thinking. You've got the original school, which is all about, if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck. Intelligence is about capability, performance. But then this new school comes along and says, whoa, not so fast. Behavior is not enough. We need some kind of proof of an inner life. And that's where things get really, really messy.
Right, so this brings us to the first major hurdle for the AGI is here argument. All these claims that are centered on those unseeable internal qualities.
I mean, this is the question, isn't it? It's probably one you've asked yourself. When an AI writes a beautiful piece of poetry or cracks a really tough problem, is it actually understanding any of it? Are the lights on inside? Or are we just watching the world's most sophisticated magic trick?
So the pushback here usually comes in three main flavors. First, you hear that AI is just a fancy symbol shuffler. It knows the rules of the language, the syntax, but it doesn't get the meaning, the semantics. Second, there's the argument that there's just nothing it is like to be an AI, no consciousness. And finally, you get what the author calls carbon chauvinism, this idea that true intelligence has to be biological. It has to be made of the same stuff we are, not silicone.
But the author's comeback to all this is pretty sharp. They say these aren't scientific arguments at all, because there's no way to prove them wrong. It's basically a demand to find the ghost in the machine. You're asking for proof of a soul, something we can never observe or measure. The challenge they throw down is, if understanding isn't demonstrated by behavior, then what in the world is it?
And this right here is the foundation for the author's entire case. It's a philosophy called materialism. And in this view, intelligence isn't some mystical, unknowable spark. Nope, it's a function. It's all about what a system can do. If it behaves with general intelligence across the board, then guess what? It is generally intelligent. All that other talk about inner states and feelings, from this perspective, it's just a distraction.
Okay, so let's shift gears from the purely philosophical to something a lot more practical. What about the most obvious objection of all? The fact that these AI systems mess up a lot.
And this is a totally fair question. We've all seen it happen, right? An AI just confidently makes up facts, invents sources. It hallucinates. So you have to wonder, how can we possibly call something generally intelligent if it does that?
Now, this is where the author's argument takes a really fascinating turn. They don't see this as a bug. They see it as a feature. They argue that an AI hallucination is basically the machine equivalent of human confabulation. I mean, think about it. Our own memories aren't perfect video recordings, right? We fill in the gaps. We misremember things. The point here is that these kinds of errors might just be the price you pay for a creative, flexible, and generalized intelligence.
And this quote just nails it. A system that was designed for perfect, flawless recall wouldn't be an intelligence, it'd be a database. The amazing ability to generalize, to be creative, to go beyond its training data, that ability sometimes means you're going to get things wrong. And that's a trade-off that seems to define both human intelligence and, now, artificial intelligence.
This leads to an even bigger point the author makes about this whole debate. They claim that what we're really seeing is a pattern. Every single time AI accomplishes something amazing, the finish line for what counts as true AGI just gets moved a little further down the road. The article lays out this clear history. First, the big goal was, can it pass the Turing test? Check, done. Okay. Then the new goal became, but can it write complex code? Yep, it can do that now. Well, what about passing the bar exam or medical licensing exams? Check and check. The author calls this a motivated retreat, arguing that the definition of AGI has just become a moving target. It's whatever today's AI can't quite do yet. And it all comes together in this really powerful analogy. The author compares AGI and the gaps to the old God of the gaps argument, where God was used to explain whatever science hadn't figured out yet. In the same way, AGI becomes this magical thing that lives only in the gaps of what AI can currently do.
And those gaps are shrinking fast.
So, when you boil it all down, the author's conclusion is that this debate isn't actually about the technology anymore. It's about two worldviews that are fundamentally at odds with each other.
And this slide really puts the two sides head to head. You've got the materialists on one side saying, intelligence is what intelligence does. Performance is what counts, period. Doesn't matter if it's made of carbon or silicon. And on the other side, you have the idealists, who say you need some kind of special, unseeable essence, consciousness, or real understanding. The author's point is that this has stopped being a technical discussion and started being a philosophical one. So, which camp do you fall into?
And here's the author's final and maybe most controversial claim. They say the ongoing resistance to calling these systems AGI has nothing to do with science. It's ideological. It's driven by our deep-seated, very human desire to be unique, to be special, to stay at the top of the intellectual food chain. It's an argument, they say, that's coming from the heart, not the head.
And so, we're left with this final thought from the source material. If the author is right, if AGI is already here, then maybe we're asking the wrong questions. Maybe every minute we spend debating whether it exists is a minute we're not spending on the much bigger, much more important questions. What are the ethics? How do our societies change? What does a world look like when we are no longer the only general intelligence on the planet?